Turn on the news right now. You'll see economists popping champagne and politicians taking victory laps. The headline is everywhere: inflation has been defeated. It's back down to 3%. The crisis is officially over. So, why does a quick run to Kroger for 2 bags of basic groceries still drain $150 from your checking account? Welcome to the CPI gaslight. We are being told the American economy has achieved a soft landing. But if you feel like you are poorer today than you were 3 years ago, you aren't crazy. You are just doing the actual math while Washington is using dark statistical magic to hide the reality of your shrinking wallet. Today, we are opening the black box of the Consumer Price Index. I'm going to show you exactly how the government legally manipulates the numbers to pretend prices aren't skyrocketing. From the substitution effect that expects you to downgrade your lifestyle, to hedonic adjustments that claim you aren't actually paying more for a car, we're going to expose the hidden hand of private equity monopolies jacking up wholesale food prices, while the Bureau of Labor Statistics completely looks the other way. But before we rip up their spreadsheets, I need to know whose reality you are living in. Which side are you on? Do you trust the government's 3% inflation victory lap, or do you trust your own grocery receipt? Drop the craziest price hike you've paid this week in the comments right now. Let's see what it really costs to live in America. The core of this gaslight is something economists call the substitution effect. It sounds incredibly boring, which is exactly how they want it to sound. Here is their best excuse. The Bureau of Labor Statistics argues that if beef gets too expensive, you, the rational consumer, won't keep buying beef. You'll buy chicken. And if chicken gets too expensive, you'll buy beans. So to reflect reality, they constantly adjust the weight of the items in the CPI basket. You've got to love the logic here. Actually, wait. Let me rephrase that. It's not logic, it's an insult. The government spreadsheet says because you were forced to switch from steak to ground beef, your cost of living didn't actually go up. By this math, if we all start eating dog food, inflation goes to zero. They aren't measuring the cost of maintaining your standard of living. They are measuring the cost of your managed decline. Freeze right there and picture the meat aisle. When you track the raw, unadjusted wholesale cost of food, the price before the statistical massage, it looks like a hockey stick. Why? Because while the BLS is tweaking spreadsheets, private equity firms have quietly consolidated the supply chain. 4 massive meatpacking corporations control 85% of the U.S. beef market. They aren't passing on savings. They are extracting a toll. And the CPI math is designed to blur that extraction. But food is just the appetite. Let's talk about cars and the absolute dark art of hedonic adjustment. If you go to buy a new Honda or Toyota right now, it costs thousands of dollars more than it did 4 years ago. You know it. The dealer knows it. The bank giving you an 8% auto loan knows it. But the government? They say the price barely moved. How? Hedonic adjustment. The BLS argues that your new car has a better backup camera, a nicer touchscreen, and more advanced airbag. They assign a dollar value to those improvements and legally deduct that from the price increase in their inflation calculation. They say you're getting more value, so the price didn't really inflate. Try explaining that to your bank. Try paying your auto loan with the hedonic value of your backup camera. You can't. Your bank account is drained by the literal sticker price, while the official inflation metric is smoothed out by imaginary quality points. Let's pause for a second, because we haven't even touched the biggest expense in your life: housing. Housing makes up about 1/3 of the entire CPI. You would think in the era of Zillow, Redfin, and algorithmic pricing, the government would just use real live rental market data to calculate housing inflation. They don't. Instead, they use something called owner's equivalent rent. I actually had to read the Bureau of Labor Statistics methodology twice when I first found this, because I was absolutely sure I misunderstood it. They don't check real-time leases. They literally dial up random homeowners, people who haven't rented a day in their lives, and ask them if someone were to rent your home today, how much do you think it would rent for? They base a massive chunk of U.S. inflation data on the guesses of boomers answering landline phones. Meanwhile, real-world rent prices have detached from gravity. If you are signing a new lease today, you are paying prices that would have been unimaginable in 2019. But because OER lags behind reality by up to a year and relies on survey hallucinations, the official inflation numbers stay perfectly manicured. So, you have to ask yourself the ultimate question. Are the economists at the BLS just incompetent? Are they just bad at math? No. The math isn't broken. It's working exactly the way it was engineered to work. If the government admitted that real, lived inflation was actually running at 8 or 9% over the last few years, a few things would happen immediately. First, the Federal Reserve would have to keep interest rates painfully high, which would crush the stock market and bankrupt the U.S. government, which is currently sitting on $34 trillion in debt. Second, Social Security and military pensions are tied to the CPI through cost of living adjustments. If CPI reflects your actual grocery and rent costs, the government has to pay out hundreds of billions more in entitlement. Actually, forget the spreadsheets for a second. Just step back and look at the motive. The U.S. Treasury has $1 trillion reason to make sure you think inflation is low. Every time they shave a percentage point off the CPI, using substitution or hedonic adjustments, they save the government a fortune. You aren't just paying higher prices at the store. You are quietly funding a stealth default on government debt through the liquidation of your purchasing power. They call it a soft landing. But the only ones landing softly are the politicians and the private equity firms hiding behind the data. The rest of us are just the crash test dummies in a rigged economic experiment. Stop looking at the official narrative and start looking at the balance sheet of your own life. If this breakdown made sense of the madness you're seeing at the grocery store, hit the like button so the algorithm pushes this reality check to more people. Subscribe to the channel because we don't buy the government's math here. We follow the money. And don't forget to drop your worst grocery receipt or rent hike in the comments below. Keep your eyes open. I'll see you in the next one. End.